The sunlight hit my office just right, spilling across the polished oak desk and catching the silver bracelet on my wrist. I adjusted the collar of my cream silk blouse and took a deep breath. Everything looked perfect from the outside, the skyline stretching beyond the glass, the quiet hum of the city, the faint aroma of roasted coffee beans from the cafe downstairs. But inside, my chest tightened with the kind of anticipation you only get when you know something is about to break you or set you free. Then my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number, familiar enough to make my stomach flip. I tapped it open, and my world tilted. "We need space from you, Bird. Please don't reach out anymore at all. Uncle Greg." I stared at the words, reading them again, hoping that maybe my eyes were lying. "Burden," I whispered to myself, the syllable bitter on my tongue. My heart raced, my fingers gripping the smooth edges of the desk. Every memory of family dinners, holiday smiles, and half-hearted encouragements rushed back, taunting me. I closed my eyes and felt the silk of my blouse slip beneath my fingers, grounding me. I wasn't that scared, timid girl anymore. But the hurt was real. And the irony stung. They had no idea how much I had fought to survive and thrive. I set the phone down, letting the words linger in the air like smoke. Something inside me shifted. The past had been painful, but the present was mine. And soon, they would understand exactly who they were calling a burden. I remember the day clearly, the smell of rain-soaked pavement, the nervous twist of my hands as I waited for Uncle Greg to answer the door. I was 22, freshly out of college, with a head full of dreams and a heart still aching for family approval. But that approval never came. He opened the door, eyes narrowing as if he could already see the disappointment he expected. "Hannah," he said, voice sharp, "we need to talk." I stepped inside, gripping my tote bag like a lifeline. My parents hovered in the background, their faces tight with that familiar mix of guilt and detachment. "We think it's best if you stay out of our lives for a while," Uncle Greg said, as if he were delivering some verdict I'd been waiting for. The words hit harder than I'd imagined. My chest constricted, my throat tight. "Burden," he added, almost casually, like it was a truth he'd always known about me. I remember my hands trembling so badly I could barely hold my coffee cup. The warmth did nothing to soothe the cold sinking into my stomach. I just wanted to. I began, but the words died in my throat. I wanted to explain my plans, my efforts, my struggles, the nights I spent working 2 jobs just to stay afloat. But there was no room for explanation in that room. Only judgment. Only rejection. Grandma had always been different. She had this quiet strength, the kind that could fill a room without a sound. I remember her giving me a small, worn notebook that morning, her handwriting looping gracefully on the cover. "Write your path, not theirs." She pressed it into my hands, her eyes steady. "Hannah, you'll need this. When they don't believe in you, you must believe in yourself." I left that house with a notebook clutched tightly, my fingers pressing into the leather cover as if it were a lifeline. The rain outside mirrored my tears, cold and relentless, but beneath it all, a spark flickered. A spark that whispered I didn't need their approval to matter, to succeed, to be worthy. That night, I packed my bags, not just with clothes but with determination. I didn't know exactly where I would go or how I would start, but I knew one thing. I would prove to myself first, before anyone else, that I was capable. I would no longer be the burden they insisted I was. And as I walked out into the rain, I felt a strange exhilaration. For the first time, freedom tasted bitter and sweet all at once. I landed in Chicago with nothing but my tote bag, the worn notebook from Grandma, and a stubborn sense of purpose. My first apartment was a tiny studio above a laundromat, the kind of place where the floor creaked under every step and the walls wore the smell of detergent and mildew like a permanent perfume. But it was mine to claim, mine to shape, mine to transform into a life I could be proud of. The first months were grueling. I worked long days at a small marketing agency, nights filled with freelance gigs and online courses that made my brain ache. I often sat on the edge of my bed, sipping instant coffee, staring at the skyline just beyond the cracked window, and wondering if I had the strength to keep going. Every rejection email felt like Uncle Greg's words echoing in my head. Burden. But then I'd open my notebook, trace Grandma's looping handwriting, and remember her voice. Write your path, not theirs. It was during one of those long nights that I met Mr. Lawson, a seasoned entrepreneur who ran a boutique consulting firm. He saw potential in the way I approached projects, meticulous, creative, persistent. "You've got talent, Hannah," he said, sliding a cup of coffee across the table one evening. "But you're holding back. Show the world what you're capable of." I took his mentorship seriously. The first campaign I led independently nearly gave me a panic attack, but when the results came in, exceeding all expectations, I felt a thrill I hadn't known in years. It wasn't just professional success. It was proof that I could stand on my own. I invested every extra dollar into building my own small client base, taking on projects that others deemed too risky or unconventional. Slowly, meticulously, I started to grow. The victories were small at first. A client who paid on time, a referral from a satisfied customer, a praise-filled email that made my eyes sting with pride. But each one was a brick in the foundation of a life I was building quietly, deliberately, far away from the judgmental eyes of my family. On social media, I posted modest snapshots, a coffee cup, a city street, a sunny window, careful never to reveal the full scope of what I was achieving. And all the while, Grandma's notebook sat on my desk, open to the page that reminded me every day why I was doing this. You are not a burden. You are a force. By the time I moved into a proper office, with polished floors, framed certificates, and the faint smell of leather and eucalyptus, I had established myself as someone they could never have imagined. I had built a career, a reputation, and a financial independence that no text message could diminish. And yet, I kept it all hidden, not out of shame, but because this was my victory first. Mine to savor, mine to control, mine to reveal on my terms. Every late night, every anxious moment, every moment of doubt had led to this. And though my family thought they were cutting me off, I had already cut myself free from the weight of their expectations. The knock on my office door was precise, confident, and immediately unsettling. I knew exactly who it was before I looked up. Uncle Greg, flanked by my parents, faces tense, eyes darting around like they were stepping into someone else's world. "Hello," I called, my voice calm, almost too smooth, as I rose from behind my desk. My office was a quiet testament to every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every tiny victory that had brought me here. The walls were lined with framed accolades, tastefully arranged abstract art, and a bookshelf heavy with the kind of business tomes I had devoured in stolen hours between jobs. My desk bore a sleek laptop, a marble pen holder, and, of course, the worn notebook from Grandma, open to a page that still whispered strength. They stepped in hesitantly, taking in the space, the aura of quiet command. My father's lips pressed into a thin line. My mother's eyes widened slightly. Uncle Greg, the instigator of that cruel text, froze mid-step, as though the room itself was judging him. "Wow," he finally muttered, and I let a small, controlled smile curve my lips. I didn't expect." "Expect what?" I asked softly, leaning against my desk. "For me to be a burden?" My voice had no venom, only the steady warmth of someone who had earned her power. They shifted uncomfortably, and I let the silence stretch. This was my moment. Every rejection, every whispered criticism, every late-night anxiety had led to this. They thought I was struggling, living small, burdened. And now, they had a front-row seat to the truth. "I run my own consulting firm," I said, gesturing around the office. "I have multiple clients across the country, a team I mentor, and a net worth that allows me to live on my terms. Every project, every deal, every decision has been mine. I am not a burden. I am an owner, a creator, a force." Their faces betrayed the shock, disbelief, and, in some corners, shame. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. My father's eyebrows drew together, a mixture of guilt and awe. And Uncle Greg, he looked like he'd swallowed a bitter pill he couldn't spit out. You've built all this?" he stammered. "Yes," I said simply. "While you were busy calling me a burden, I was building a life you couldn't imagine. I didn't need your approval. I didn't need your help. I didn't need your permission. And yet, here I am." I let my gaze drift over them, steady and unflinching, feeling the power of years of resilience settle like a shield around me. This office, these clients, this career, it's mine because I fought for it. Every sleepless night, every rejection, every tear, it was worth it. I chose me and I won. The room was quiet except for the faint hum of the city outside. They looked at each other, the reality settling slowly, painfully, that they had underestimated me, that their words had been cruel, but irrelevant to my destiny. I saw it in their eyes, shame, realization, and the first glimmer of respect. For the first time in years, I felt the full weight of freedom. Not revenge, not anger, only triumph. And I knew that from here, the next moves, my terms, my rules would be mine to decide. I leaned back in my chair, letting the soft leather cradle me as I watched their expressions shift, shock softening into something else. Hope, confusion, even a hint of guilt. This was my moment of power, but not of revenge. This was about control, about rewriting the terms of my life and their relationship to it. "Here's the truth," I began, my voice calm but firm. "I am willing to help, but only on my terms. I will not be a silent witness to old patterns, to negativity, to the same cycles that hurt me for years. If you want to be part of my life, you need to meet me halfway." My mother blinked, a tear threatening to fall. My father's jaw clenched, while Uncle Greg looked at me as if I had become a stranger. I let a small, deliberate pause hang in the air, giving them space to absorb the weight of my words. "First," I said, "you need to recognize your mistakes. That starts with acknowledging how your words and actions affected me. No excuses. No deflection. Full ownership." I saw their faces tighten, but I held their gaze. "Second, you need to actively change the behaviors that hurt not just me, but yourselves, whether that's judgment, entitlement, or bitterness. I can guide, but I won't tolerate regression." I leaned forward, letting the air fill with intention. "Third, you need to pursue your own growth. Find your purpose, your passions, and your dreams. I built my life from the ground up, and I expect you to do the same. Not for me, but for yourselves." Uncle Greg's voice cracked as he asked, "And if we do this? Then we can rebuild something new," I said, letting a small warmth slip in. "We can have a relationship, but it will be real, grounded in respect, not obligation. You will earn trust, and you will respect boundaries. And for every step you take, I will acknowledge it." I gestured toward Grandma's notebook, lying open on my desk. "This," I said softly, "reminded me that I am never a burden. That strength comes from within. You need to find your own notebook, your own reminder, to guide you. Otherwise, nothing changes." They nodded slowly, some more convincingly than others. But I knew that even acknowledgement was a beginning, a far cry from where we had been. I could feel the subtle power shift settle in me. I was no longer the rejected niece. I was the architect of this moment, the designer of the rules. "And one more thing," I added, my voice lighter now, carrying a mixture of firmness and compassion. "I care about all of you, but caring does not mean compromising my worth. You must meet these conditions, or our paths remain separate. I will not be silent. I will not diminish myself again." For the first time in years, I felt the full balance of strength and compassion, the ability to protect my space, assert my boundaries, and still leave room for growth, theirs and mine. I realized that empowerment wasn't just about success. It was about clarity, honesty, and the courage to insist on respect. Weeks passed after that confrontation, and slowly, subtly, things began to change. My parents started taking steps towards self-awareness. My mother attending a creative writing class she had always postponed, my father reconnecting with old friends and volunteering at the community center. Uncle Greg, the man who had branded me a burden, began calling more often, hesitating at first, then sharing small victories in his own life, moments of pride he had long ignored. It wasn't perfect, and it wouldn't be. Old habits die slowly. But the cracks of possibility were widening into something tangible, and I watched it all from my office, my sanctuary, with a sense of calm I hadn't felt in years. I kept Grandma's notebook open on my desk, the pages worn and familiar. I traced the words again with my finger. Write your path, not theirs. I realized now how prophetic her advice had been, not just for survival, but for transformation. That notebook had been more than paper and ink. It was a compass, a reminder of who I was before they defined me, and who I could become when I refused to accept their limitations. And in that reflection, I understood the true measure of my journey. I had endured rejection, humiliation, and heartbreak. I had built a life from nothing but ambition, determination, and quiet resilience. I had learned that independence wasn't just financial, or professional, or even visible to the world. It was emotional, spiritual, and fiercely protective of my self-worth. Sitting at my desk, I poured a cup of coffee, the rich aroma filling the room. I noticed the chipped polish on my nails, the soft hum of the city outside, and felt an intimate connection to the ordinary yet extraordinary life I had carved for myself. I had taken the sting of their rejection and transformed it into fuel, fire, and ultimately, freedom. And I knew this. I would continue to care for them in the way that was healthy and honest, but I would never again be defined by their limitations. I had claimed my life. I had claimed my voice. I had claimed myself. I looked out the window at the skyline I had once only dreamed of and whispered to no one but myself, a smile tugging at my lips. I am no one's burden. I am Hannah Blake, unstoppable, unapologetic, and entirely my own.